the follower.
It follows. It follows. It whistles. It stalks. It follows. Stop following me! Stop chasing me! Stop!
Those were the final words heard from Abigail Lee. The phone call to her best friend, along with the photo message, arrived at 3 a.m. She couldn't be found the next day and is considered missing, most likely dead. She had noticed a strange shape following her at a distance for the past month. Abigail, Abby to the people who knew her, liked to walk home from work every day. Her apartment wasn't too far from her office, maybe a mile or 3. Plus it was a safe neighbourhood with a very low crime rate. It was safe for her to walk home, even though she finishes work very late. But one day, she saw it. That figure. The sight of it creeped her out, plus there was a sound that echoed through the distance. She felt uneasy, but making it home safe made her think it was just a random thing, that she was jumping at shadows and imaginary sounds. She saw the same thing when she was walking home the following day, except this time it was a bit closer and the sound was a bit louder. She did her best to ignore the fear and kept walking home. Again, that figure always walked the same pace and occasionally made the same sound that was too distant for her to hear properly. Again, Abby made it home safe, and she assumed it was someone just doing what she did and walking home from work at around the same time. She felt silly for getting scared, especially when nothing actually happened to her on either of those days. She resolved to just walk home from now on. But after that, her resolve broke. The person walking behind her was even closer, enough to make out that they were unusually tall and had long limbs. They were still too far away to make out any finer features, but she could tell something was off. The sound was louder too. It felt like an insect was humming in her ears, but looking around, Abby didn't see any. Either way, it made her walk faster and faster to get to the safety of her apartment. Glancing behind her, Abby saw that the figure in the distance was keeping pace with her. She suddenly stopped, and the figure stopped. She shouted out to the distant figure, asking if she could help them with something. Why were they following her? The figure stood still, and only briefly did Abby hear the sounds of buzzing intensify. Abby resumed walking and refused to look behind her again, one foot in front of the other, each one quicker than the last, until Abby was almost jogging home, the ever-present buzzing strong in her head. Abby decided to take her car to and from work the next day. Yes, it was a waste of gas, but she really didn't want to walk home anymore. But in the car, the buzzing vanished, the presence vanished. Things were quiet and safe again. She thoroughly checked, but no one was following her in her car. Abby could go home and feel safe again. This was her routine for the next week. After that week though, her car refused to start. The mechanic said that something had chewed through a lot of the wires that connected some vital components within the car. She was lucky though, as her job was so close to her home. She could just walk home while her car was in the shop. Abby despaired. She almost thought about taking a vacation while her car was in the shop. She even brought it up with her boss, but her request was made at too short notice and her vacation was denied. And so she had to walk. That night was quiet and peaceful as she started her walk home from work. Abby almost thought the figure stalking her had moved on, that the worst was over. That was when she heard the whistling, loud whistling that sounded almost like chirping. It was coming from behind her. She looked over her shoulder and in the distance, but much closer than ever, was someone following her. Details that were not clear from the distance were much easier to see. She wished she couldn't see. Pacing after her, step for step, was the tall figure that haunted her earlier in the month. It was very tall, easily past 6 feet, with long arms and even longer fingers. Its legs were equally long. What scared Abby was the look of the thing's face. It looked like a doll's face with button eyes and a painted grin. Then the grin widened and the mouth opened to reveal rows and rows of pointed yellow teeth. It raised a massive hand and waved, fingers rippling as it did. Abby ran. She heard the whistle and buzz follow after her. The sound was much louder and it made Abby's head throb and hurt. It made her run faster, but she could hear the heavy steps further behind her. Somehow she made it home. Abby called the police and made a report about the creature stalking her. They promised that they would look into it, thinking it was some kids playing pranks on the frantic woman. They filed a report which automatically triggered a flag in the agency's systems, automatically closing the police case while agents were dispatched. The follower is a creature the agency is very familiar with, and we know how to prevent it from catching its victim. The agents dispatched were due to arrive at Abby's home the following morning to explain how. But the agents were called away on a higher priority case and sent Abby an email when there were no other agents free to be dispatched. Even if the agents couldn't attend in person, the email contained all the information Abby needed. Abby's spam filter caught the email, and she never learned the information. The trick to stop the creature is to approach it while whistling. That will immediately drive it away, and it will never show up again. An easy solution. The worst thing to do is to keep running away from it night after night. Getting scared only makes it come closer, and hearing the creature's whistle makes people paranoid and manic. Abby didn't know this, didn't receive the information, and every day she ran from the follower, letting it get closer and louder, night after night. The buzzing whistle followed her even into her apartment, robbing her of sleep and peace of mind. It was the last night when she left the office and saw that the thing was only a few steps away from her, waving and whistling and popping its mouth. Abby called her sister, who, as expected, was fast asleep at the time. She didn't know what she was going to say, but the whistling grew even louder, and she suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder. So Abby ran. She didn't make it.